Kid, son, you are now in the Rapid Response Tactical Squad. The double RTS.
Kick some ass.
Breeze, kill it. We kill them all, but God sort them out.
Very proficient already.
When we turned up in Prague, we had a 2-week rehearsal period with the military advisor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom McAdams. He's a real artist. He's one of the best. Trainers, SAS, everything else.
So many of these military advisors probably spend more time in Hollywood than the military at this point.
Okay, listen in. Unload!
And with Tom, he had just come out, I think a few months. He had just left after 25 plus years in the services. So there was no kind of jadedness to him. He had just experienced it. So everything was as fresh as it could be.
I was leaving the military 13th of September, and this job was coming up at the beginning of October. So when I said, yeah, fine, I'll do it for 3 weeks, and obviously I've been here now for 3 months. It was completely different to what I expected.
It's funny, I mean, I've done a couple of military-type movies before, but I've never had training like this.
Weapons, fire reaction. All right, are you happy with that? Don't put the barrel into the ground, Yovia.
Pass that on. Have your wits about you, because blank ammunition does injure.
Fire safety catches. We've got time for one more, is that it?
What I was brought to do here was to advise on all the military tactics, all the techniques, get the guys to look like special forces and make them look like they've had years of experience soldiering.
Magazine 25 rounds, load!
Tom was very determined to, I think for himself as much as anything, make us look as authentic as possible.
There's no bullshitting with Tom. Tom is a straight guy. What you see is what you get, and I love that.
Wait until I give the command up. Okay, rounds down on one knee, and then start working together. So that's communication. Lead scout, as soon as you're ready, start patrol.
I took it very seriously, because that's what I'm here to do.
Okay, got your mag? Okay, let's do it then.
Not only did he kind of instill the military knowledge and know-how and skills, but he also helped us bond and form into a solid, cohesive unit.
The biggest thing was to get them to gel as a team. And we started off by going to the gymnasium every morning.
6 a.m., working out together, training together, going through and trying to simulate what soldiers would go through. The only difference is you know, they, of course, go to war and we go back to our hotel. And I call up the pizza place.
It was important that they trusted me and got to listen to what I have to say.
Happy?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see a good drill then.
Most importantly was the safety aspect of using weapons.
Right, what we're going to do before we actually start is a demonstration of what damage a blank round could do, just so that we know on the safety side of it, you're not pointing weapons at each other.
Because they are real weapons. Even though we're using blank ammunition, it can still kill you. And one of the first things I do with the guys is demonstrate how serious a blank round is. And the way I did that was to use a polystyrene head and shoot it with a blank round, you know, and it disintegrates. You can make a hell of a mess, as you can see by that. So do not point the weapon at anyone. Always aim off. Timescale, I think, is an important factor in anything, and some of the guys have probably not had the time to practice with the weapons that they should have.
For inspection, for arms.
So I start from the very beginning and just go through all the basics.
When you're holding the weapon, ensure that you hold it correctly, and I'll just quickly go through that.
Stripping and assembling.
As I said before, keep the working parts like that, in a nice uniform manner. You're not going to have any problems putting it back together again. You're going to be firing double taps. It's 2 rounds, okay, followed by another 2 rounds, so on and so on, until I tell you to stop. I want to look at you and see what reaction it has, okay? Targets to your front, in your own time, go on.
It's very interesting having that amount of power in the sense that it's coming from your body, coming from your hands, you know. It generates a certain kind of energy.
Okay, is anybody not finished?
Once I started doing the weapon training and I got to a reasonable standard, I could then move on to patrolling skills, which entails holding the weapon correctly and how you move around objects, how you adopt different fire positions. Then the stoppage drills, loading, unloading, all the stuff that a soldier, a basic soldier, would have to know.
In the script, it was written that we would say retreat, and Tom was right there saying, no, you would never say retreat, you would say fall back. And I said, okay, and I said, would we say, get the fuck out of here? And he's like, yeah, you would say that too. I was like, okay.
Once it's past you, clearing free. Clear.
We started off with check-made AK-47s, which are very light in comparison to what we have now. They're just very light weapons. So we had a lot of movement drills with that, which obviously at first is kind of nerve-wracking, you know, with the ammo and stuff.
Some of the actors were very intimidated by the weapon and nervous at the weapon.
Try and be a little bit more relaxed, some of you. I'm not pointing the finger. Get yourself comfortable, bring it up, double tap. If you want to get down on one knee, double tap, stand up or lie down, and just get used to different fire positions and just double tap. But try and keep both your eyes open, okay?
I'm still flinching. It's, you know what, the flinching, no, I'm not too bad with the flinching, it's blinking. Sometimes, and this is the truth, sometimes air comes out of the barrel of the weapon and it kind of makes you blink a little bit. It's not fair. It's just, you know, it's air.
To try and stop the actors from flinching, especially using something like the chain gun or the minigun, call it what you want, it's a 30 cal weapon. And with that weapon system, even though it's firing blank rounds, the actual overpressure that comes out is quite immense, and there's a hell of a flash with the thing.
Firing this huge gun and this huge sound, the flinch would be right in my eyes. And Tom would see that and he would say, Deobi, you're flinching. Do it again. You're flinching. I think I, more than most, had to go through a lot of firing to get that flinch out of my eyes.
What do you think of that then?
This was the very first time that the destroyer has actually picked up that weapon. Now you see the weapon of choice. So my question to you is, how did it feel?
It felt...
Let's tell everybody at home.
It felt awesome. It's huge. It's massive.
No, I'm talking about the gun.
The reason I went into so much detail was so that they look like they know what they're doing. And everything they do looks like they're special forces.
I'm not going to lie to you, I love it. I had so much fun. Action! When you are firing a shitload of rounds and it's so visceral, it's so real, you know, it really helps me do my job, because the leap of imagination for me being in this circumstance, immediately it's not acting anymore. It makes you feel like I'm really doing it. Come on! It's kind of, you know, our collective hope. When you look at this unit of soldiers, you will actually, you know, you will see them performing as a highly professional squad of guys.
Clear left. Clear right.
If you're going to portray our military, then we damn sure better have our shit together and we better look tight with what we're doing. So we should get together and we should know in a certain environment where there's present danger or possibly danger looming, then we should know how to walk, how to talk, how to give hand signs, eye signs, what we're listening for.
Look alive, men. Game time. I gotta say, when we're inside that chopper, when that door is closed and all the guys are standing there ready to go out with their weapons loaded, cock block and ready to kick ass, you gotta ask yourself, the real deal soldiers who go through that, who are standing behind that door, what they must be thinking. I got a lot of love, a lot of respect for those guys. They're the real deal. It's movie shit. It's cool shit, but they're the real deal.
They picked it up very quickly, and obviously as time's gone by, they've done so much of it. They're starting to switch on to the fact of how to go about it. I certainly wouldn't leave them alone, though, to be perfectly honest with you. But they are learning.
You're not sure. Never good on my maths.
Do you want to do it again? Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
We took pictures of The Rock, with a bit of expression to his face, which helps you when you realize the design. You can kind of see the character in the film rather than just a static look. And we did many different versions, ranging from very subtle to wild. It helps to show the range of, well, it could be this crazy, because then it answers everyone's questions. Then you can kind of go through and hone out, well, it's cool, but it's too much, or that's too subtle, we're not going to see that. Richie Alonso, along with Jeff Dawn, put the makeup on The Rock once everyone had decided on what level the appliances should be.
Put the prosthetics on today was a 2-hour makeup job. This is the second layer of my prosthetics. And the third level, which we'll put in on Saturday, is about a 3.5-hour makeup job, and I'll be all out BMFOP. The baddest motherfucker on the planet.
6 o'clock in the morning, our last day shooting in beautiful Prague. We have 3 stages of makeup. During this 5-minute fight, we'll see him go through these 3 stages. One of the stages is just his knuckles bursting out. Another stage is appliances on his cheeks here, and on his jawline. We put some fake teeth in his mouth and make him not look so white, so beautiful, so Hollywood movie starish. And so that's the second stage.
Here, you want to put in?
No.
Sure? Germs. They're germs.
Have germs.
Then the third stage is what we're doing right now, and that will include a forehead piece. We'll be covering up his eyebrows, putting new eyebrows on, putting cheek pieces on, both here and here, a jaw piece, and these full-fledged monster lenses. This is basically the same stuff that was used on Wizard of Oz. It's that old, the technology.
Has a very rubbery feel, so everybody knows. Feels like dried chicken.
It tastes like chicken, too. There's better materials nowadays, such as silicone and gelatin. The problem is that they don't breathe. And with heat, with action, they don't hold up. They will literally melt. A gelatin piece will melt off your face.
The way we end up blending all of this together is, ideally you have each piece slightly overlapping each other. That way you only have one line to deal with to cover up, to camouflage, instead of 2 lines if they barely meet each other. And we use a couple of materials. One of them is called Bondo. It is a thick, gooey material that looks like Bondo. And it's actually a thickened adhesive. And we're able to blend out little rough edges and add some texture so that you no longer are able to see that line. Then we end up painting it with a prosthetic paint. It's actually an acrylic paint. We use many different colors for that. And continue to add texture, shine, dull it down in places if it's too shiny, and do everything we can to make it look like skin, make the eye believe that it's skin on camera. Our first layer of paint was applied with sponges and brushes. We added a kind of a thick layer to take away the foam color coming through. Now we're going in there with an airbrush, just feathering it out, blending into his actual skin color, taking the fake-looking foam and trying to blend it into real-looking skin. This is the first step of it. This is the same material, this acrylic paint, that I used to cover his tattoo, whether it be just one tattoo or the tattoos that cover a quarter of his body, his upper body. And usually about 3 different coats of this, 3 different colors of it, gives it a realistic 3-dimensional skin tone. What Richie's doing now is he is airbrushing with some inks the veins that he had sculpted, because Richie sculpted all of these pieces for Rock. He is intensifying the three-dimensional veins on his forehead with this airbrush ink. What I'm doing now is applying the eyebrows. These are real hair eyebrows that have been hand-stitched. Each hair has been hand-stitched onto this very fine lace material to match up with Rock's real eyebrows. I use this photo as reference just so that I can remember where his real eyebrows are underneath those appliances. And we're applying a little bit of spirit gum, same adhesive that's been around for decades and used in the theater for decades, to apply hair goods and appliances like these.
So we'll juice you up on the set with the sweat and stick the contacts in on the set, put the teeth on the set, and you'll be ready to film. And
Here we are.
Then it's up to you.
4 hours later, finished product. Great job. Thank you guys very much.
Rock got into it. He really enjoyed looking in the mirror, seeing that transformation. He was just the ultimate professional.
Stand by and action!
Stan Winston's group is really fantastic, and they've done a lot of legendary monsters, if you would. And in this case, they had, I think, a really tough bar to cross, which was people were very familiar with the things that they were building. So they had to really access that familiarity, but then take it to the next step.
What was kind of neat about Doom in particular is because we had all this like broad territory to walk through, we could go through like every single exciting thing we ever thought was cool in a horror film and, you know, put people through those experiences, whether it's getting like stalked by a dude with a chainsaw or something more psychological. It's like we had the freedom to kind of hit every one of those points.
It'd been a while since I'd done a good monster film, so this was exciting. So I went online, started looking at the images from the game, and I liked the feel of the creatures. They're very meaty, kind of organic looking. I thought that would translate well. And I think the idea was for us to keep the essence of these characters. We weren't told to lock to their designs per se. As a team, what we wanted to bring to it was what we do in film as far as bringing texture and detail that can't do in a video game.
Well, the first time I saw the creatures was back at Stan Winston's studio, when I was back there and they showed them to me on the computer, and I thought, this is absolutely incredible. So when I saw it, I was like, that would be fantastic. If we can make that, like 80% of that. They're like, no, we'll make 100% of it.
When designing these creatures, after we come up with our 2D concept art, then we have to start the sculpture process. We had to do body casts and have them into sort of a neutral position. Those are replicated in like a fiberglass that disassembles to aid in the molding process later.
There's tons of fittings to make things work and make sure it's all right. So Brian Steele and I both were cast months and months ago. And we had several fittings. The first thing that you do start with is a head and shoulder life cast, and then a body cast from head to toe, where they wrap you in plaster bandages and get an impression of your entire body.
And then you actually start sculpting on top of their body what the creature's going to look like. And you stay as faithful as you can to the 2D design, but certain things happen in 3D when you start walking around something, looking at it from all angles, and it sort of modifies and morphs based on reality. Once that's signed off, then we went into molds, and then from molds you have to start fabricating all of the suits and the parts, and then in this case all the internal muscle structures and putting all the mechanics into them so that it's moving.
This happens to be a suit, so it's something that I slip into now, zip up the back, plunk the head on, put the hands on, I'm ready to go.
What we were trying to explore and achieve was internal muscles being able to move with the performer. A lot of times it's just a big bulky suit around somebody, so you might not see the scapula move, or it's restricting for the actor. And by making these things independent or using elastics to move like a tendon or muscle structure inside, we got a lot of freedom in motion, which I think transfers.
They're me now, a demonic imp. So what's happened to their body? Well, an imp, these creatures their bone structure has shifted and changed. Heads have expanded some. The coolest one is that I love was the sewer imp that you see down there. That's actually was Dr. Willits, but you don't know that right away. He's got 11 eyes on his head.
Action! The Baron character, which is similar to the Hell Knight in the game. He's a big, thick, hulking creature. Sort of looked like old decayed meat was sort of the idea. So it's kind of grayish and then filleted areas on his skin. With these imps, because they're based more on Doug's structure, which is very lean and sinewy, with differences in completely different heads, was to also separate them out by color.
Oh, there's something behind me, isn't there?
What's great is these monsters are not CGI monsters. These are real monsters with real gravity. And you could always tell in movies when you see the CGI monsters because there's no gravity and they're kind of like hopping everywhere, but these monsters are the real deal. When they walk, you feel the weight of their walk and you see the weight of their body and their muscle structure, and you see that in these monsters.
Our workload on Doom sort of broke into two categories. The Carmack, when he's starting to transform, and what happens to Rock in the movie, those are pure prosthetic jobs. The Baron or the Imps, it was a combination of a bodysuit which was form-fitting to the actor, which changed his body shape, which is in a way a giant prosthetic on him, but it also blended off into animatronic heads.
I have an earpiece in my one ear, and I'm connected to John Rosengrant. He's usually standing by the monitors, and then he can tell me in my earpiece, move a little bit to the left, move a little bit to the right, reach, you're covering your face when you do this, so don't do that, bring it lower, whatever. So I get a lot of direction in my ear from that. Now, being able to talk back is hard because I'm not mic'd to talk back, but I yell and go like this a lot, like, yeah, heard you, yeah.
Now this is scary. Thank you.
I always get asked the questions, are they phasing out the animatronics? Is that going away? Because everything is going CG. And what we try to think about is what's the best answer for the shot. If it's better for it to be CG in the shot, we're all for that. And if it can be done live, I think the benefits of doing it live with the animatronics is it gives eye lines and it gives reactions and things for the actor to perform with. I think it helps to have something there lit and real for everyone to focus on and react off of. One of the first things I said to everyone is that we've got to get great performers in these suits. Not just anybody that's big that can fit in or really skinny, but someone that can also act.
I think it's so important that there's a real physicality, which you can have something that looks as good as you like, but if someone hasn't got the physicality to pull it off, then it'll never succeed.
Brian was the Baron character, and he is a huge, thick, really ripped, sinewy but huge muscular character. Doug ended up playing the three different imps, 3 or 4 that we ended up doing for this.
In this film, there really was no one that could actually double me because these suits are made for a 6'4", 140-pound actor guy named Doug Jones, and no one's really going to be able to fit into those, so I have to do whatever I have to do, including taking lots of bullet hits and flying backwards and, getting hit with the butt of a gun from Carl Urban. So I had to do a lot of that in the sewer, especially in the water.
It's had its appendix removed. It's human.
When I'm sitting down to kind of build something, it's like, I think it's really important to draw from real life. And I think, but like we do with the Doom creatures, you'll see a lot of kind of semi-obvious, inobvious, really blatantly obvious adaptations of like the human body. And you'll see like, weird little pelvic bone shapes kind of like, cresting through people's heads. I know everybody finds sex scary, so that's all over the place.
To make these things sort of disgusting and don't even look at that, which I think that needed in this, because it's scary. A lot of what we drew upon was forensic pathology books. Kind of twisted, you know, you're looking at dead people in various states of decomposition and whatnot.
I got to actually go and attend some dissection classes at the Prague Medical School, which is like going back into a Victorian teaching hospital or something. And I'm lucky that I'm not squeamish. I can sort of, you know, switch off the squeamish side and sort of employ the scientific side in a way.
This is brain matter from Portman.
There's a couple scenes where she's performing autopsies, and it's funny because she is the one who can stomach what's going on, and the guys are definitely having a hard time.
The Creature Workshop team is so deft and precise with what they do. These boys walking around with pots of things called ultra pus and ultra slime, and, you know, working out how we can get a really bilious looking black blood for these creatures, because they don't want the creature blood to be the same as human blood. So they found a way of putting little pellets and really making the blood coagulate and be thick and gory. It's brilliant.
Withdraw! Withdraw behind the nanowall!
Doom was a lot of fun on a lot of levels, but it was very liberating in that, you know what, this is going to be an R-rated movie. We're going to see some gore. We're going to make it nasty.
Breakfast of Champions. One of the big failures of monster design is a lot of people make superheroes with teeth. You know, they're generally kind of like big muscular guys that, you know, you kind of think that whoever's making this kind of wishes they were them versus wanting to run from them. And I think, I mean, I get caught up in that too, but I think horror films and games fail when they try to be very specific about what, you know, things that are in this nebulous territory is like, that's what's scary. I mean, confusion is scary. A lot of that stuff is fresh and creepy, but there's still this like hint of humor about it.
At the end of the day, if you can sit back and you've scared somebody, or they've turned their eyes from the screen and said, oh my God, that's gross, there's also a lot of fun on that level.
I was the visual effects supervisor for the whole film, but I was also the director for the first-person shooter. So that sequence was a special unit. We called it the FPS unit. The first-person shooter unit shot for about 14 days. We had a planning period of about 3 months for that.
Bang, 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 down.
It's just a plain exciting kind of concept. It was a way to convey the heightened reality that was happening. So we used it as a plot device, but also as a pure enjoyment for gamers and for people who haven't been exposed to it.
The first-person shooter is a 5.5-minute continuous shot. It's made up of creatures in suits, stunt players, explosions, bombs, live-action shooting, real sets, completely computer-generated environments, computer-generated creatures, makeup creatures with computer-generated heads, arms, everything. I mean, we pulled out the stops and put everything we possibly could into this specific sequence. It was very challenging.
He should react to bang. 3, 2, 1, and bang. Everybody. He reacts, and that goes at the same time.
In the sequence of events, you have, in order of importance, the script, the storyboard, where you essentially board your key moments. Then from there, you have to create the animatic. Then the rehearsal, the video rehearsal, then you cut it together, and then you have a dry run, then you have an effects rehearsal, and then you shoot it. To get from one end of the facility to the other, you had to cut. You had to break for the end of the day and put it together. So that means you had to do something called hookups, which means you had to go out of one room and into another. And there are various ways you can do hookups. You can do it by moving a camera and passing something and cutting, and then rolling the camera again on a subsequent day, put it right where it was before you cut, move right past it, and try to hook it up right between that move. That is the hardest thing you could possibly do, and we went for that kind of hookup. And it's true, we have hookups in this where you go through a room and of course the door opens, and when the door opens, we have a green screen or a blue screen. cut, put the camera on the next day in that room and continue your move. Another that's easy is essentially whip panning, you call it. You come off something and you whip real fast to something on the other side. And you essentially can jump cut or little cross dissolve right on the whip. Not hard to do. So we chose to sort of mix it up, but we have a lot of hookups where we're literally coming off a character very slowly, and now we're in another day, and you cannot see the seam. One of the differences, visual differences, in creating a game and creating a film is this thing called aspect ratio. And what it basically means is the ratio of the height of the screen to the width of the screen. And in a computer screen, you have an aspect ratio that is more square. It's 4:3, 4 units wide by 3 units high. So when you have that, you have a lot more latitude of bringing a gun into frame and seeing over the gun to the action in the distance. Then now translate that to a movie, and particularly in this movie, it's widescreen to create that big vista of information. So now we've established a widescreen. In the game, you have a narrower peripheral view. So what happens is things can sneak up on you quicker in the game. Now you have widescreen. You have to be very careful. You hear something behind you, and it's harder to have something sneak up on you. We have narrow halls. So that's an issue of widescreen. The other thing is when you bring the gun up into frame, you eclipse the action because there's no room for the gun in that narrow height. So we had to make a decision that we brought the gun up when we needed it, we took it out when we didn't. We brought it up when we needed it out, we brought it off to the side, and we really played with the use of the gun. Sometimes we brought it up and looked through the eyepiece. We made a decision that in this case, we would use makeup effects to do the most difficult thing, and that is bodies and creatures, guys in suits that could hit the ground, that could tumble with other characters, that could fight and slug and interact. And in many cases, we took and put computer-generated heads on these creatures because you could take that further. Oftentimes in makeup effects, it's the head that is the most difficult to do. CG does that well. Oftentimes in CG, the bodies are the most difficult. So we put the two together in a lot of cases. First-person shooter was designed and planned out to be a 5.5-minute continuous take. The intention was to do the full thing, put it in, and then if there were any issues that arose out of too big a difference of style between the game and what is necessary to make a movie, then cuts would be placed within the first-person shooter to hook it in. Obviously in the DVD and in the bonus materials, we have the option of putting the full first-person shooter in.